we talked about how the French and Indian War put Britain in a lot of debt and that they had to pay off and they needed some way to raise money. So one of the first things that they did after the war was pass the Stamp Act. Now this act taxed a lot of things in the colonies. It was a tax where it taxed basically everything that was made on paper. If you had to send letters, if you had to do legal forms, if you had to do anything, newspapers, pamphlets, anything that you printed, it taxed them. You had to actually get a stamp to go on the paper to show that it was legal. Kind of like an envelope today. If you were mailing an envelope, you have to put a stamp on it so that you know that you've paid to send it. Well, they had to put stamps on. They had to put stamps on all the paper things that were made to show that they were legal, that they had paid the stamp tax. Now, this did not go over very well in America. Now, you might have heard the phrase, and if not, you should know it now. No taxation without representation. That was the phrase that the Americans came up with to talk about their complaints about the Stamp Act. Now, be very clear about how this works. Americans were not opposed to taxes. Taxes were fine. Everybody has to pay taxes to help the government work. They knew that. But what they were opposed to is somebody else telling them what taxes they had to pay. The Americans felt that if they were going to pay taxes, they had to have representatives in Parliament to help vote on it. That's why they said no taxation without representation. If they did have representatives in Parliament back in England, they would probably be okay with the taxes because they got a vote. Now this goes back to the readings that we had at the beginning of the year that talked about, remember a goat, the giraffe named Goat? Is that right? Kind of crazy. Remember those readings where it said, the state of nature, all those ideas that if you give your some of your freedom over to somebody else, you should still have a vote and you should still have a say. Well, the Americans believed that if they were going to give some of their freedom to the British to help protect them, that they still needed a say and they still needed to have a vote. Well, the colonists had no vote whatsoever. They had no say in their government, and they were being taxed. And this made them mad. And this started that move towards the rebellion that we talked about. So the Stamp Act, they had to stamp paper, things that were on paper, and they had to pay this tax, but it made the colonists really mad because they felt they were being forced to do something against their will.